79-year-old Norma Bell set up home with husband John in this red brick terrace house 30 years ago. After his death in 2010, she remained in the home where she'd raised her 3 children and cared for many others.
She'd fostered 50 children over the time that her and her husband John were foster parents. So she was a remarkable woman who looked after all these kids and gave them the best start that she could in life.
Norma and her husband John bought the house after we moved in. Met some of her kids then, was friends with her kids, still friends with some of them now. And she was just always pleasant. Didn't mess about with her. She was firm but fair. Just generally a lovely lady.
Norma was well liked in the community and known as someone who always had time for a friendly chat and would open her door to anyone. But it seemed this friendliness would ultimately lead to Norma's untimely and horrific death.
What shocked the community the most, that actually happened on their doorstep to somebody who they all knew, somebody they loved.
This was the day PCSO Graham Handley decided to do his rounds of neighbour visits to residents in the community.
Hello, you all right? On the Saturday morning, when I got up to Norma's address here, relatives were just pulling up in a car outside. Told me, well, can you have a word with my mum? She always leaves the door open behind her. She always opens it to people. At which point Norma's come to the door. I've had a conversation with her regarding don't leave your door open, don't answer it to strangers. Make sure you know who they are before you open the door.
But it appears Norma didn't heed the warning.
Emergency service.
Fire brigade, please and police.
What's the address of the fire?
It's Westbourne Road.
Westbourne Road. Yeah, what's the problem there?
A raging fire just started.
What's on fire?
I don't know.
Right, so it's a house fire.
And there's an old lady lives in there on her own.
Right, OK. Do you know if the lady's still inside?
I'm banging on the door now.
We're on our way to this. We will be there shortly.
Natalie Wing from Cleveland Police was just starting her shift.
On Sunday, the 3rd of April 2016, I was at work and got a call to say that there'd been a report of a fire at an address in Hartlepool. So at that point, my team made our way to the scene.
Emergency services respond to the call and head to the home of 79-year-old Norma Bell. But it seems as though the first responders are on this occasion a little too late.
They found a deceased female in the address who'd been brought outside. It was made clear to me at that time that that was a suspicious fire, as the female had a ligature tied around her neck.
Norma was dead before the fire started.
A fire started, a woman's body found, a ligature around her neck. This isn't an accident. This is a murder. The news filters through the community.
Police have revealed that an elderly woman discovered in a Hartlepool house fire had been murdered. The victim has been named as 79-year-old Norma Bell.
It's such a horrific crime. It's not the sort of thing that we cover all the time by any means. It was a really rare event.
An investigation begins, and immediately police have a clue.
Norma's trousers had been pulled down and her tights and her knickers had been sort of cut from her navel sort of down to her crotch.
Was there a sexual motive to this murder? The discovery sends shockwaves through the community.
Personally, I'd describe it as horrific. How anybody could do something like that to a little old lady, somebody's grandmother, is beyond me, to be honest.
I remember it being a Sunday morning, shortly after 8 o'clock. I was coming past the bottom of the road, and I looked up and I seen a road cordoned off with police cars, fire engines, ambulances.
These fires had been set at this property was so the offender could cover the tracks and destroy some of the evidence that would be available at that scene.
The This is not an accidental death. Norma has been murdered. Her house set alight. But who would want Norma Bell dead? Initial clues point to a sexual motive. Alistair Simpson was the Detective Chief Constable at the time.
My initial hypothesis was that it was most likely a burglary or a robbery gone wrong. It was somebody that had attempted to try and steal things from Norma, you know, whether by force or by distraction. Another element of the offence was obviously that Norma's trousers had been pulled down. Some of our suspect search was looking at whether or not there was people that had committed burglary alongside a sexual offence.
Was Norma the victim of a burglar, a sexual predator? With the post-mortem examination ongoing, police cast their net wide.
We had a huge amount of lines of inquiry, so obviously things around identifying Norma's cause of death and time of death or time window of death. Particularly interested in Norma's movements on sort of the days leading up to the murder and the activity at the house, you know, in the time leading up to the murder. We were very sort of quickly onto public appeals for information that might help us.
The body of 79-year-old Norma Bell was found on Sunday after a fire at her house in Westbourne Road. Today, forensics officers were continuing to examine the house and nearby area.
It was a major crime scene. We had officers stationed at the front door. We had police officers at the back, where the back alley is, blocking off the alley gates with police cars and stood at the back. You had police tape across the road so nobody could come up or down the street.
At this stage, there's no suspect, so police have to get into the mind of a murderer. What does a killer do next?
You're doing the investigation to catch a killer, but you very firmly feel that you're doing the investigation on behalf of the family who need to know that their mother's killer will be caught.
Norma's burned-out house has been made safe and is being forensically examined by scene-of-crime officers, desperate for any evidence which might reveal crucial clues.
So one of my priorities when we actually go in there is identifying things that stand out as potentially being fast-track items that we can send away to get a result, to actually see if we can identify an offender from that address.
The results of the post-mortem come in and turn the focus of the investigation on its head.
There was no evidence of any sexual assault and no trace of any semen. The attacker might have thought about a sexual assault but might not have gone through with it.
There was some kind of sexual motive. It might not have been to assault her, but there was some premeditation about humiliation, removing dignity, and having power over her body. And that says something very scary about her killer.
Police look at the cause of death in the hope it reveals clues to the identity of the killer.
So Norma had a number of broken ribs and some bruising to her back, and the pathologist was able to tell us that the attacker would have been kneeling on Norma at the time of putting his or her hands around Norma's neck to strangle her. So we were able to conclusively determine that Norma was dead before the fire started.
He may have been kneeling on her chest to make sure that he strangled her and to keep her still.
Having ruled out a sexual motive, police now have to ascertain why Norma was targeted and who was behind the murder.
There's a concept known as the golden hour, which reflects the fact that actually, in the early stages of an investigation, it's possible to lose evidence that you'll never get back again. So some of the early decisions are critical to make sure that you're doing things in the right order. An example of that is the forensic examination of the house.
He thought the best way to destroy all of the evidence was to set fire to the house, and he lit fires in 2 different places. The police would have put a lot of resources into this Norma knew a lot of people, so in those first and early stages, there would have been a lot of people to consider as possible suspects.
Scene of crime manager Natalie Wing's role is to assess the scene and process the evidence.
We were carrying out assessments of what areas would be useful for DNA recovery. What seemed very clear to me was that Mrs. Bell was a very tidy and organised lady, but there were certain items that stood out as being unusual and that seemed out of place. There was a number of mobile phones that appeared to have been dismantled. There were some batteries and the backs of phones kind of scattered underneath the TV cabinet, which was placed in the corner of the kitchen. We recovered some evidence from those, which sent away.
With police awaiting forensic results from DNA found at the property, it's Norma's bedroom which throws up their next clue.
We had information from the family that there'd been a significant amount of cash being kept within the address by Mrs. Bell.
Norma's family revealed that she kept cash in a briefcase inside an ottoman at the end of her bed.
Norma's bedroom had been ransacked, so there was paperwork all over the bedroom, you know, and a briefcase that had been in an ottoman sort of next to Norma's bed had been taken out. Norma was of an age where she might have been targeted by a burglar that was seeking to do a distraction burglary to gain entry to the house to try and steal from her. You know, she was a vulnerable victim. You know, she would have been easy to overpower.
The motive appears to be money. Then police discover something else missing from the house. A new 49-inch television. Neighborhood inquiries intensify.
We had to go to every single house, visit every single person, obviously go through the day-to-day stuff. Did you see this? Did you see that? Anything unusual? And they built up a massive amount of intelligence, which the murder inquiry team were delving through.
You know, we got a really, really good response from the community. People from all walks of life wanted to help the investigation, wanted to help us catch Norma Bell's killer.
And it's not long before they have a lead.
Because we're community officers and people see us all the time, they trust us and they give us information. She'd been visiting an elderly gentleman, driving a car just off Cornwall Street out the back. She'd remembered seeing this lad coming out of the top of Westbourne Road carrying a TV.
Could this be Norma Bell's killer? Who is he? Police turn to the public for help.
I went and did a media appeal. I went on TV and asked the public to come forward with any information about this TV. I would like to take this opportunity to appeal to anyone living in the local area who may have seen or heard anything suspicious from late evening on Saturday to early morning on Sunday.
The investigation is gaining momentum, but there is one mystery which threatens to scupper the hunt. How did the killer get in? There was no sign of forced entry.
How did the offender get into the property? Have they climbed over the rear to get into the rear yard and come through the back? Or have they potentially been let into the property by the victim?
Another hypothesis that we looked at the time was that the attacker was known to Norma and that she opened the door to her attacker because she knew him or her at the time.
The new findings throw the focus of the investigation firmly on the local community. If there was no forced entry, Norma Bell opened the door to her killer. Police now know Norma's murderer was probably known to her.
The fact that there was no forced entry kind of turned the investigation in on to people that Norma would know. And we do know that when these type of murders happen, especially when women are killed, it's usually, statistically speaking, going to be somebody that they know.
Yeah, you feel sick about it. Yeah, it's an eerie feeling, actually.
It was such a shock, I suppose.
People just couldn't believe it had happened. Everybody knew her. Speak to her going up and down the street.
The hunt for Norma Bell's killer is on. Hopes rest on DNA samples found in Norma's home, which police had sent off to the lab. Suddenly, new information comes to light when they question Norma's family. She had recently been visited by a local man, Gareth Dack.
So we knew from our initial talks with the family that Gareth Dack had borrowed money from Norma the previous Saturday, and he'd been round the previous Monday to apologise for not being able to pay that money back. He'd lived in the same street in his childhood, and he'd been a childhood friend of one of Norma's foster sons.
He was a father of four. He worked for his dad in an asbestos recovery firm, so he was quite well paid doing that job.
I knew Gareth as well. We used to go drinking in the local pub with Gareth's mum and dad. Gareth was a, what do they call it, like a jack the lad. Yeah, I'd seen him on a few occasions where he's just doing daft things, wheel spinning, threatening people and things like that. I think he thought he was a lot bigger than what he was.
Police now have the name of someone who had visited Norma recently and need to speak to him to establish if they can rule him out of their inquiries.
He was somebody that clearly we wanted to speak to. We wanted to speak to understand about that. We wanted to understand when the last time we'd seen Norma was, you know, what he was doing in the relevant time window.
With detectives looking to track down Gareth Dack, in Westbourne Road, Graham Handley is making headway speaking with the local community.
So everything goes in an officer's report. So the slightest conversation you should put in as an officer's report. So everything that happens around a major inquiry like that could be very, very key.
And it wasn't long before he received some interesting information.
Got some intelligence, unconfirmed intelligence, that having previously been sort of in debt to drug dealers, Gareth Dack suddenly come into a little bit of money, you know, and that potentially been seen carrying a TV around, and we knew that Norma was missing a TV from her front room.
Police focus turns even further towards Gareth Dack, and then DNA results come in.
That Gareth Dack's DNA had been found on the phones that had been taken apart in the living area in the house. You know, at that point, Gareth Dack became a suspect in my eyes, because there was no reason for his DNA to be on those phones as far as I could see, unless he'd been involved in the offence.
It isn't long before further DNA evidence links Dack to the heinous crime.
Some of the key things that we actually recovered from Mrs. Bell herself were the ligature. We were able to then achieve a DNA result which came back to Mr. Dack to say that he was represented within the profile on the ligature. And we were able to then obtain a DNA profile from the waistband of Mrs. Bell's underwear and knickers, which then came back as a match to Gareth Dack.
That was another piece of the evidential chain that really pointed to the fact that Gareth Dack was the murderer of Norma Bell.
Suddenly, police have a #1 suspect. But where is Gareth Dack?
During the course of the day, our detectives initially phoned him just to arrange, you know, an interview, a chat with him about his knowledge of Norma and his knowledge about what might have happened. And he'd explained that he was in Liverpool and would be coming back later that evening.
Police now believe there's a killer on the loose. But what lay behind this brutal murder? And despite the killer's attempts at burning the evidence, how had everything he had done next led police right to his door?
Emergency service.
Fire brigade, please retreat.
The body of foster mother and grandmother Norma Bell has been pulled from her burning home. But the truth behind her death is shocking. On the night of the 2nd of April, this man entered Norma Bell's home, strangled her with his bare hands, and tied a ligature tightly around her neck. He cut her clothing and underwear, making it look as if there was a sexual motive. Then he ransacked her house for money. This man is Gareth Dack. This man is Norma Bell's murderer. And we are about to discover what this killer did next. Having killed Norma, Gareth ransacks the home, looking for anything he can sell.
He obviously had financial problems. He was in debt. He was a small-time drug dealer and cocaine user. So he'd run up some debts, and he was well known for going around trying to borrow money from local people.
Dack settles on a new television.
He was seen carrying a large TV out of the top of Westbourne Road.
He's later sold that night for 60 quid to a friend or an associate.
Dack is an opportunistic killer. He isn't somebody who's really planned what he's going to do next. But after he's killed Norma Bell, he recognises that there are opportunities around him. There's television, for example, that he can go and sell. And his drugs motivate him more than his sense. So he picks it up and he carries it through the streets, and people see him with that item.
But Dack needs to get his hands on more cash.
From that point on, I think Gareth Dack was a man who was driven firstly still by a desire to get a fix for his drug addiction, you know, and that was driving his initial decisions to take the telly and take it up the road and sell it to somebody and access some drugs. But following that, I think he had to come back to the address and he had to think about what he was going to do next.
Dack trawls through Norma's house, seemingly unaffected by the horrific crime he's just committed.
Norma had around about £700 in cash. We know from the family members that money is likely to be in a briefcase which was in an ottoman at the bottom of Norma's bed. It could only have been found by somebody that was ransacking Norma's address, and we know that, you know, that's what Gareth Dack did.
But still, Dack doesn't leave Norma's house. And what he does next is chilling.
He's rung sex lines from her landline that were advertised on Babe Station Channel. As she's dead or dying, he's made those phone calls.
So he was using her phone to phone sex lines. Why was he thinking about sex at this particular time? That shows his callousness. That shows how he wasn't feeling any remorse or shame from what he'd done.
Dack phones the sex chat line more than once throughout the night and early hours of the morning before deciding to visit a friend and buy more drugs with the money he's stolen from his victim.
He then left the address around about midnight. He's taken some more drugs and he's picked up his car and he's driven it back to Westbourne Road. And returned probably, the next phone call to the chat line was about 10 to 2 in the morning.
Dack parks his car along Norma's road, unaware it will be picked up on CCTV cameras. Then Dack returns to Norma's house and sits by her body, continuing to call the chat lines.
He wants to escape. He's murdered a defenceless old lady, and the recognition of that is so powerful that now he wants to take himself away. And being driven by drugs means that his instinct and compulsion sexually are probably high level as well.
It was really unusual that the murderer spent so much time in the address throughout the course of the night, rather than potentially committing the murder and then looking to distance himself as quickly as possible from the scene.
Sunrise. Having spent a considerable amount of time at Norma's home, Gareth Dack decides to try to cover his tracks. His aim, to get away with murder. His plan, to burn down her house.
He tried to destroy the scene of the crime by blowing up the house.
He'd left the back door open, he set the gas off.
These fires had been set at this property was so the offender could cover the tracks and destroy some of the evidence at that scene.
If he'd shut the back door after he left, the build-up of gas would have destroyed not only Norma's house, but our house and next door as well.
I don't think burning down the house was probably what he was thinking of doing at first. And it was at the end of the night that he decided, I think I'm just going to set a fire and destroy all of the evidence. Nobody will ever know that Norma's clothes were cut. Nobody will ever know that I had been there.
Having turned on the gas and struck a match, Dack knows he needs to escape unseen. He jumps over a wheelie bin into a side alley. And he knows exactly where to hide out to watch the unfolding drama. Just doors away at his parents' home.
He's gone back down the road to where his mum and dad live. And he seems to have hid in the garage for a while.
He didn't have a key to his parents' house, but he was able to access the garage.
He hid himself away in his parents' garage because he probably needed to get his head straight and he needed to get his story straight, because somebody at some point was going to come and talk to him, and being able to take some time and get his story straight was probably quite important.
Emergency service.
Fire brigade, please and please.
At 8:23 a.m, with Gareth Dack hiding yards away, police and fire crews arrive at the scene. They're about to discover Norma Bell's dead body.
The body of an elderly woman, who I can now confirm to be 79-year-old Norma Bell, was found inside the property. Norma was a mother of 3 biological children and a foster mother to more than 50 foster children. She'd lived on Westbourne Road in Hartlepool for 27 years and would have celebrated her 80th birthday in May.
Dack lies low in his parents' garage for several hours. He's thinking hard about how to escape from Westbourne Road unnoticed. But there's a problem. His car is now within the police cordon and he cannot access it. He makes a call to his girlfriend.
He asked her to arrange a taxi for him to get back to his home address. She did that, and I think he arrived home that afternoon and spent the rest of the Sunday with his partner.
Now in the comfort of his own home, Dack has time to rest and think through his next plan of action on how to get away with murder. Norma's house is still a crime scene, and police are on the hunt for a killer. Dack knows he needs to lay low, but first, he makes a risky move. He heads back to Westbourne Road.
He attended with his girlfriend to come and pick up his car from Westbourne Road, so he got a taxi back to Westbourne Road, and he got his silver VW Bora car, you know, and he took that away. And he also was making arrangements with associates to go on a trip.
Having got his car, Dack decides to leave Hartlepool, stopping for supplies at a local service station with a friend.
For many people, the idea that you could murder someone and then get on about your business might seem completely strange. But you have to remember, Dack is recognising that he needs some kind of alibi, some kind of cover-up. The more normal he can seem, the less he will believe that people can connect him with the crime.
He goes away from the Hartlepool area and he turns up in Liverpool.
He went with friends to Liverpool. His friends were visiting relatives.
In the days after the murder, what he's trying to do is just act normally, not attract any suspicion to himself. And he didn't seem to have a lot of difficulty doing that. He didn't seem to be worried or concerned or emotionally disturbed by what he'd done.
In Liverpool, Dack and his friends enjoy some drinks in a pub. He's unaware that the investigation into Norma Bell's murder is gaining momentum. And he is now suspect number 1.
So I knew, after making Gareth Dack a suspect, that I wanted to arrest him at the earliest opportunity. I also knew at the time that he was in Liverpool.
As Gareth Dack makes his way home to Hartlepool, something is playing on his mind.
From returning from Liverpool, Gareth Dack had accessed his phone and he'd Googled Hartlepool Gareth Dack, I believe in an attempt to see if there was any news already out there that suggested that he was being looked for as a suspect in the offence.
At this point, it's clear that for Dack, reality is starting to settle in. He's realising that the likelihood is that he's going to be incriminated in some way.
When Dack returns to Hartlepool, the police pounce.
Stand up a sec, Gareth.
stand up. Obviously, tell you what it's all about.
Yeah.
Okay?
I was supposed to come down, Martin. Police station.
Right. Right, I'm just going to have to cuff you, all right? Right. As a result of evidence obtained during the investigation into the murder of Norma Bell, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Norma Bell that occurred between Saturday the 2nd of April 2016 and Sunday the 3rd of April 2016. Do not have to say anything but it may harm your defence if you do not mention or questioned, something which you later rely on in court. And we do say it may be given in evidence.
Dack's movements have brought him 3 days of freedom, but this is all about to come to an abrupt end.
A man's been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the death of an elderly woman in Hartlepool at the weekend.
I'm just going to have to cuff you, all right?
Gareth's name was getting spread around pretty quick, and then everyone started text again, guess who's been arrested for that, guess who's been arrested for this, and what have you.
Right. As a result of evidence obtained during the investigation into the murder of Norma Bell, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Norma Bell that occurred between Saturday the 2nd of April 2016 and Sunday the 3rd of April 2016. But do not have to say anything but it may harm your defence if you do not mention or questioned, something which you later rely on in court.
Sunday the 3rd of April 2016, the day life on Westbourne Road changed forever. A much-loved grandma and foster parent found dead in her home. A fire set to cover the killer's tracks. A former neighbour arrested on suspicion of murder. But what led to this father of 4 carrying out the most horrific crime possible? Gareth Dack was a hard-working father, but ill health had led to time off work as an asbestos lagger, which in turn led to a spiralling drug habit and debts.
In the couple of weeks prior to the attack, he'd been contacting a number of people to try and borrow money. We'd established that he was a drug user and that he was, using money to buy drugs.
On Saturday, 26th of March 2016, 33-year-old Gareth Dack asked to borrow £20 from his childhood neighbour, Norma Bell.
So Gareth Dack approached the property, knocked on the door and go in. I told Norma on numerous occasions not to let anybody into her house. She normally listened, but because she knew Gareth, he was a friend of one of the sons, she let him in.
He gave an explanation that he needed to borrow some money because he needed to go and visit his parents in their caravan, that they had his bank cards and he needed the money for petrol to get there. So Norma invited him in. Norma went to her handbag and gave him £10. He'd asked for £20, but she wasn't particularly comfortable. She'd shielded her handbag while she gave him the money, and she gave him £10.
Having borrowed the money, Dack needed to pay it back the following week. But while he did visit Norma again, it wasn't to repay her.
He'd been at home with his partner. I think they'd been out for a family day out with the kids, and about 8:30 he seemed to have some kind of row with her. He left home, and sometime that evening he turned up at Norma Bell's house.
He went to Norma's address that night because he was desperate for drugs and he'd run out of cash and run out of sources of credit. She was a strong lady and she would have had no difficulty saying, "No, I'm not lending you the money." And I think Gareth Dack lost his temper at that point, and that led directly into the attack that ultimately would have caused Norma's death.
He murdered Norma, and that was because he wanted money. I don't think that Dack planned for a lot of the things that happened that night. Things, as in the rest of his life, got out of his control.
Having arrested Gareth Dack for the murder of Norma Bell, police bring him in for questioning and get a warrant to search his home and car.
So in the car we found £405 in notes, and we know that Norma potentially had around about £700 in cash in the house. My theory is that the cash that was in Gareth Dack's VW Bora was the cash that he stole from Norma's house. It could only have been found by somebody that was ransacking Norma's address, and we know that, that's what Gareth Dack did.
Police were also able to put together the final piece of the jigsaw. Forensic officers had discovered a vital clue as to how the killer had left Norma's property after setting it alight.
So this is the alleyway that leads to the rear of Norma's address. Now, we know that the last time that Gareth Dack left that address, after he'd set the fire, he must have come out the rear because he snapped the key in the back of the front door lock and then exited using the wheelie bin over the gate with the barbed wire. There was a footprint on a wheelie bin.
Once Gareth Dack had been arrested, there was a search carried out at his property where there was a pair of trainers recovered. We were then able to send those trainers and the footwear mark away to a scientist who was then able to provide us with extremely strong support that those trainers that belonged to Mr. Dack had left that mark on the top of the wheelie bin.
With all the evidence compiled, it was now for the courts to decide Dack's fate.
A man's appeared in court to deny murdering a Hartlepool grandmother who looked after dozens of foster children.
On the 12th of January 2017, the trial into the murder of 79-year-old Norma Bell begins at Teesside Crown Court. Journalist Tom Wilkinson was there every day of the trial.
So, for every part of the prosecution case, he tried to give an innocent explanation for why it was there. He was quite assured in his story, he stuck to it. He's quite arrogant in the way he said it.
The jury heard DNA evidence was overwhelming, and the chance of it belonging to someone other than Dack was 1 in 1 billion. But Dack had an answer for everything.
He accounted for the DNA on the phones by saying that when he'd been in Norma's house, and he professed to be a friend of Norma, he professed to see Norma quite regularly, to do sort of jobs around the house for her, to be a bit of a helping hand.
There was DNA found on some spent matches where he struck a match and tried to blow the house up. He said, "Oh no, when I was there the other night, I was trying to light a fire for her."
We were able to make a mockery of that, really. We were able to take statements from the family that showed that Gareth Dack was not a friend of Norma.
On the 1st of February 2017, the jury came to a conclusion. In a unanimous verdict, they found Gareth Dack guilty of murdering Norma Bell. He was sentenced to a minimum of 33 years before parole.
Gareth Dack has never shown an ounce of remorse, and considering the horrific nature of the acts he's committed, I find that incredible, really. But he's never accepted responsibility for what he's done.
After the verdict, Norma's emotional family faced the public.
Norma Bell was our confidant, our friend, our crutch to lean on, and not least, she was our mum. Our mother dedicated her adult life to fostering and looking after needy children. Our mum had a heart as big as a lion.